we're going to be opening up the brand new Stormlight Archives edition of Call to Adventure. I have here the Deluxe edition. The retail edition should be hitting stores now, and we're going to take a look inside. The packaging is going to look a little different between the two, and there's going to be a little bit, like, I believe there's 2 extra cards that are in this edition that are not in the standard retail edition. But other than that, they're going to be very similar, and the games themselves are going to be the same. So let's take a look at the Stormlight Archives. So, without further ado, gotta get that shrink wrap off first. Stormlight Archives is the newest in the Call to Adventure series. One of the great things about this is that Call to Adventure Brotherwise games put out. They put out the Name of the Wind expansion, which is needed for the core box to work, but this one is standalone. So if you don't have anything for Call to Adventure, this is the perfect starting point. So this one has the deluxe, so it's going to be a little bit fancier. One of the things that I know is fancier is this World Hopper's Guide. So if you're not familiar with Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archives, this is based in that world, and this is kind of a primer that they put in, filled with a lot of the art and facts about the world. I believe this is not included in the original standard edition, but you can go and look up quite a bit on the old internet about Roshar if you're not familiar with it yourself. Rulebook, nothing too fancy with this one. The rules for Call to Adventure were pretty straightforward. The biggest new thing that they are doing now is this Knight's Radiant icon. But other than that, it's a lot of iconic and solo mode, plus glossary and FAQs, and expanding your adventures to make the other components work together. Quick start guide on the back. Set of punch board, this is your experience counters. An ad for the rest of the series, including Boss Monster and Unearth, other games from Brotherwise Games. These are your player boards. There's going to be a few of them, and it looks like they are a little bit different from the original ones, as they have these little gems, which are part of the World of Roshar, the shards and currency, with the different marks and chips of different gemstones stuck inside the spheres. And different denominations is not only how big the gem itself is, but also what quality. So emerald, ruby, sapphire, and diamond marks are all different denominations of value in that world. One of the unique things here, we got our runes. So when you make a check, you're actually going to be throwing these double-sided runes depending on what skills you have for that check. And they have this nice handy tray to keep all that nice and neat. Let's take a closer look at some of these. So they have multiple sides, and the marks on this one would be a success or not success. Just like that's a success or that is a hero or anti-hero card. This is one of the nicer ones for your strength skill. And a dark mark, or dark rune, which can be used to kind of push your luck in the game. So, those are in the core game as well. Let's start taking a look at some of the fancier stuff. So these are the deluxe cards. They will not be in your standard Call to Adventure set. It is a super fancy and holographic Windrunner. as well as a super holographic and fancy Odium. Check those out. Now, of course, the light here in the holographic makes it insanely to see, but score pad. As you score up the games, it is a cooperatively competitive style game. One thing I have always appreciated, the original one had it as well as this nice organization tray, but even inside, you got the symbol of the Cosmere tucked away on the inside of the box. So this will be a very nice addition for the Deluxe. One thing I've always appreciated about the Call to Adventure series is the tarot size cards and the art that they lay on them, because it is just gorgeous, gorgeous art. I was excited for the Name of the Wind expansion because of seeing more of that world and art renditions of that world. And now we're going to see the same thing with the world of Roshar. As soon as I get any sort of bead on this shrink wrap. There we go. So that, various cards of Act 2, Act 3. As you progress through your story in the game, you actually go from Act 1 to 2 to 3. And let's take a look here at the other deck of cards. Let's mix up the core of the game. There we go. And this is where most of one is going to be. Let's take a look at some of these cards. So there's going to be two versions of the Act 1. We got some Act 2 in here as well. So let's take a closer look at some of these. So, for example, you have an Ardent. This is actually one of your origins. And you can have a couple different origins. No, not origins. The unmarked ones are origins. This one is an Age 1, Act 1 card. So you can actually gain this in the game, and part of your story then would be the fact that you were an Ardent, either currently or in a past life. Ardents are one of the faiths, priests of the game. You can also have challenges like this. That's one of the Reshi Islands, which are beautiful floating islands. Take a look at what is known as a World Singer looks like. Those are actually super cool. Loving the art, honestly. Now, World Singer is an Act 2 card, so you won't get it right away in the game, but it will potentially come out of the deck. One of the features of Roshar are these giant crustaceans called great shells or chasm fiends. So there's a representation of a chasm fiend versus someone about to take them down. Hopefully take them down. Being super dangerous. You never know, really. One of the key features in the first book is the Shattered Plains, which is where all these chasm fiends come from. But then you have the main character, Kaladin, who goes and does some secret training. So maybe your hero, your adventure in the world of Roshar will also include some secret training. Now I'm going to warn that this is a little bit of a spoiler, but one of the great adversaries in the game, and I love seeing him depicted, is an entity named Odium. And I showed the Odium card actually as the holographic, but this is the regular art, and it is, I almost like it better than the holographic, personally. Holographic is super cool and neat, and I'll definitely be using it, but the regular Odium is just beautiful to look at as well. Let's see. Taking a look and see what other cards there might be. We talked about Kaladin, and at a certain point, Kaladin starts stepping into a role of his own as a leader, and take a look at just everything that's going on. You can actually even see, it's probably a little washed out in the camera mode, but he has a companion Spren sitting on his shoulder. Another character from the Stormlight Archives. You get to see her more in mid-tier books, but she gets her own art as an Act 1 card, as a thief. And she's just awesome. I can't say anything else about that, right? One of the fancy things about Roshar, of course, is shard plate and shard blades, which are these almost magically enchanted weapons and armor that greatly enhance the user. Shard blades can pretty much cut through anything, and shard plate can pretty much protect you from anything. So here is a beautiful picture of someone in shard blade, in shard plate with a shard blade. Now, the Radiance are something of a myth in the world and betrayed humanity, according to legend. That doesn't mean they look awesome. So there is so much art and scenes. Like, I'm flipping through this and I'm actually just remembering some of the moments in the books based on these. We talked about Spren before, so let's take a look at Sprenbound. They are entities of thought for the most part. So you can have Honor Spren, you can have Fear Spren, you can have Glory Spren. So like emotions can draw different types of Sprens up. Now, Aristocrat's actually a good one for showing off. The world's a little different because it's not Earth. Roshar is full of these crustacean and attending and kind of insect creatures. Whether they be chulls and they're lumbering kind of like oxen, or are they more things like a faithful axhound, as depicted here. So I've got one more in here I'm going to show off, and then we'll skip ahead to some fancier, more advanced cards, I should say. And that is an ally called a sister. Now, that is a different type of being, because not just humans live on Roshar, but there is another race called the Parshendi. So what we're seeing here is a Parshendi, and they have this marbled red and white usually, but it could be a couple different marbling patterns, skin tones. So they're super unique, and we're going to see a lot more of them in the next book, which will be coming out in November, but as we're going to shift some focus. But in book 3, now they're in books 1, 2, and 3, but in book 3 we get a lot more than we did in book 2, and we got more in book 2 than we did in book 1. So one of those fun things of sitting here going, seeing some of this world brought to life through the artists that Brotherwise commissioned for all these beautiful cards. Another aspect that could potentially pop up is the human society is broken into eye color being actually a trait that is deemed worthy. So if you have light eyes, you're actually relatively like a noble versus dark eyes, which is known as commoners. One aspect in the story that you also hear about, check out this one. This is the Night Watcher. It is a powerful ancient spren that people go and ask a gift from, but all of the Night Watcher's gifts are also torn, as there's a boon or a curse for everything you get, and what you will get may never match up to what you ask for. So let's see, what else do we have? So some of the big things story arc wise is like what is known as like the return of the heralds and the return of the Radiance. So the Radiance were creatures at some point, or beings at some point with power, turned their back on humanity and thrust the world into kind of this chaos moment that they are. But the Stormlight Archives kind of talk about bringing that back, and some of those coming back, and nothing is more iconic than some of these final cards where you actually become one of the Radiants, and you can become a different order of Radiance. So you can become a Windrunner or an Edge Dancer. And all 10 of the orders of the Radiance are actually here. I'm only going to show you a couple of them because I don't want to spoil off too much. And it's not always good stuff in the World of Roshar either, because you can become addicted to something. So there's beautiful art, beautiful things going throughout it. Here's another one that's good. Just to kind of showcase more options and more ways of this art. Visions of the Future is definitely something that is frowned upon by the Ardentia, as that is what kind of destroyed the world by legend in the first place. So you got some awesome, beautiful art in these cards, and there's so many of them. Let me pull up the card count here. On those alone, there's 32 character cards, 72 story cards. So a grand total of 106 of those tarot size, beautiful size, full size art cards. I'm going to leave you with one last one. And it's interesting. We've got a sword called Nightblood. When it gets pulled from the scabbard, this blackish smoke peels from it, as well as it taints the wielder. So many beautiful cards. I can't even stress that point. And this is what always drew me to the original Call to Adventure, the first expansion, which was for The Name of the Wind, which is another novel. And then when Stormlight Archives was put into it, it was one of those. I appreciate that as well, and I can't wait to see more of that. Now, Brotherwise did talk about a new expansion coming up, that they are going to go back to Call to Adventure, but it's not going to be themed on anything. It's going to be more... the first one's a lot of high fantasy, realistic fantasy, and now the next expansion that they teased is showing things like dragons and more fantastic fantasy. Now, another piece that I can show you here are these hero and anti-hero cards. So these are things that you actually pull into your hand and are kind of your game effects that you can play to help yourself make a test or something else. But they are also equally covered in beautiful, beautiful art. Burning Prayers is a piece of faith. Sometimes you get stuck with things like chasm duty, where slaves get sent down and they're dealing with all the things that are down there, potentially trying to avoid chasm fiends. I've talked about it a few times. We got an anti-hero card called Broken Oath with that beautiful Blades of the Herald stuck into the ground. Opening scene in the prologue of the first book. Now, I'll show off a couple more of these. I'm going to try to pull spoiler light-ish ones. A couple of them in here are definitely like characters that you see in book one, and they definitely get a more advanced and more story. I'm gonna let's go with this one. I think we'll leave this one as our final. Roshar is covered with these high storms, and there's talk about the Everstorm coming. And so for a card that is just literally a piece of art that is a storm, we get a lot of beautiful detail in there, as well as you get your game effects. So Stormlight Archives from Brotherwise Games has quite a bit of stuff going on with it. Tons and tons of cards, all with beautiful art. Now these are tarot-sized cards, so if you are a sleever and want to protect these, you can get tarot-sized sleeves for these. And then the regular hero, anti-hero cards are your standard size. Brotherwise does make their own specialized sleeves, so if you really like the back of the cards, you can actually get those as your sleeves. So I hope you've enjoyed taking a look at Call to Adventure, the Stormlight Archives. Now, once again, I'll say this is the deluxe box. The original box I have pictured in the lower right hand corner, which is this art just blown up full size, or the art that's on the manual. So if you're looking in the store, that's what to be looking for. And the only major differences besides the box itself are going to be these two holographic cards, which are in here anyway. They're just alternate versions of them. And then this World Hopper Guide to Roshar. So again, I thank you for watching, and we will be at you next time. We will have more streams coming up, so keep an eye on our Facebook, Twitter, and well as our YouTube and our Twitch. We'll keep those going for you. So thank you very much for watching.